Would you be at all shocked if I told you people were leaving states with high taxes to move to states with low taxes? You'd probably be like, duh, especially with the expansion of the digital economy. One of the things that played a role in my move to South Jersey, basically the Philly area, I lived in New York for a long time. New York's very expensive. The taxes are really high, and I produce at home, right? I do my work wherever I want. So why live in a big city? Now that a lot of people can work remotely and work online, they can move wherever they want. So when you're facing massive taxes, you're probably going to say, it's cheaper to live here. Sounds fun. Let's go do it. And that's what we're seeing from the Wall Street Journal. They say, so long, California. Goodbye, Texas. Taxpayers decide some states aren't worth it. After new tax law made it costlier to own a house in many high-price areas, some residents are pulling up stakes. Whoa. Texas? What are you doing, Texas? California, I get, but Texas, come on. Let me tell you something. One of the big problems we have right now is that young people can't afford to buy houses. How is it going to help the next generation or help anyone if we are jacking up the taxes, property taxes on owning a home? We need to alleviate the stress and pressures and allow young people to actually enter the housing market so that older people can sell property, younger people can buy property and become homeowners. If we don't, we're going to have an entire generation of millennials who are, indentured servants with massive debt, no homes, no families. That's going to be a lost generation, man. That's really, really dangerous. But of course, California, go figure. But at least these people do have an alternative. At least they're leaving and going to trying to buy a house somewhere else. Let's read. The Wall Street Journal writes, Larry Bellardi and Robbie Laporte are longtime San Francisco residents, but they are planning to leave California for Nevada next year. A turning point was the federal tax overhaul that Congress passed in late 2017. The law made it costlier to own a house in many high-price, high-tax areas, reshaping the economics of homeownership in those slices of the U.S. Now, at first I would say, Trump administration, federal government, what are you doing? You're making it, the tax overhaul made it harder to own a house? Well, actually, it looks like that could be strategic. Making people leave urban areas and move to rural areas could actually help the Republicans. They say, 2 years after President Trump signed the tax law, its effects are rippling through local economies and housing markets, pushing some people to move from high tax states where they have long lived. Parts of Florida, for example, are getting an influx of buyers from states such as New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. Many people saw their overall taxes go down after the 2017 law was passed. But the law had two main changes, making it tougher to live in high-cost, high-tax states, especially compared with lower taxed options. It essentially curbed how much homeowners can subtract from their federal taxes for paying local property and income taxes by capping the state and local tax deduction at $10,000. It also lowered the size of mortgages for which new buyers can deduct interest to $750,000 from $1 million. These changes have the biggest impact on a sliver of the population who have high incomes and live in expensive areas. They tend to have white-collar jobs and the ability to pick up and move. Many own their own businesses, work remotely, or are nearing retirement. Could it possibly be that Donald Trump knew that his tax laws would tax the rich and alleviate the middle class? That to me is actually kind of a shocking proposition. I'm never one to assert conspiracy, but I think it's fair to say that Donald Trump's plan with the tax cuts wasn't necessarily a tax cut on the rich. It was supposed to be a general tax cut. That's my understanding. And the middle class did see a tax cut. The upper class did see a tax cut. However, according to the Wall Street Journal, it now seems like the relatively wealthy people from high class urban areas are being forced to move because it became more expensive. Isn't that a good thing? Wouldn't that actually alleviate wealth inequality? If I really, really doubt you are going to see any progressive praise Trump for taxing the wealthiest among us who have to worry about property costs nearing $1 million. The average person's going to own a house. It's not going to be nearly that high. So I'm not going to say it's a good thing. This could theoretically move wealthier people into more rural and more conservative neighborhoods, effectively reducing their political power in some sense. But it could also mean they're going to bring their politics from San Francisco to rural Nevada, and they're going to have a ton of money to influence local politics. That could be good news for Democrats. But at the very least, you can say it ends wealth inequality, I guess. Well, let's read. They say, critics say the changes have hurt everyone who lives in high tax states. I guess bad news for Democrats, right? By taking a bite out of tax revenue. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, for example, panned the state and local tax cap last year. It has redistributed wealth in this nation from Democratic states, we're also called blue states, to red states, he said at the time. Is it possible that Donald Trump passed a law targeting wealthy urban individuals and it's giving wealth power to, so it's effectively redistributing wealth, like, many on the left want to happen, but to red states? Perhaps that's actually what would happen if you did redistribute wealth. You know why? Blue urban areas are extremely wealthy with high costs of living. Maybe the Democrats didn't plan for this, or I shouldn't say the Democrats, but the far left, that if you were actually going to take money from the wealthy, you'd be disproportionately giving it to rural working class white people. Perhaps that was the unintended consequences of wealth redistribution. They say the average property tax bill in the U.S. in 2018 was about $3,500, according to Adam Data Solutions, a real estate data firm. But many residents in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and California have been deducting well over $10,000 a year. In Westchester County, New York, the average property tax bill was more than $17,000, the highest in the country. Lo and behold, the blue areas are the expensive, wealthy areas, and Trump cut the taxes on those wealthy people, and thus many of them had to move to red states or red areas. So look, man, what do you think was going to happen? This is the paradox of Democratic policy. They complain about racism and racial injustice in the police force. But are they doing it in like Bumpkinville, Oklahoma? No, they're doing it in St. Louis, Chicago, and New York, large urban centers. Isn't it weird that many people on the left and these Democrats will be like, police, all cops are ACAB, they say. I can't say with the words, I can't swear. But they'll say cops are racist. But they're not referring to small town sheriffs. They're referring to the places where they live that enact policies they voted for. It's like one of the weirdest paradoxes, like with Michael Bloomberg and Stop and Frisk. They complain about Stop and Frisk, but it's literally gun control measures. They're trying to find weapons on these young people. It's a policy you voted for. They complain about. Now that he's running for president, Bloomberg panics and apologizes. But look at this. What the story is telling us is that Donald Trump reduced the amount, or I should say the Trump administration signed a law that reduced the amount you could deduct on your property taxes. And guess who was hurt by it? Well, rich people. And guess where they lived? In blue states. And now they're mad about it. So when you complain about wealth inequality, you're talking about San Francisco and New York. Dude, those are Democrat like centers. So I guess maybe it's fair when the left complains about liberals because they're the ones who are in these big ivory towers in these big cities enacting racist policies and then complaining about those policies and voting in more Democrats who enact the same policies, and then they keep complaining about it. Because I'll tell you this, when you complain about stop and frisk and racist policies in these big cities, it's not Republicans who are doing it. You're not voting for them. That's what I don't understand about your arguments. You see why I have a problem with Democrats, but I'm not a Republican? I grew up in Chicago. I watch Democrats do this cycle where they're like, the police are racist in our city. Dude, you voted for the politicians, more Democrats to come in and enact those policies in a Democrat city. You're not complaining about Republicans. This is what they don't seem to understand. Why would someone from a city like Chicago who claims to have left-wing policy views not like the Democrats? Because the Democrats do this circle thing. Like, it's so weird when we hear about this national level, police issues and Black Lives Matter. And it's like, how often do we hear about stories in a red state about police, targeting minorities? It's always the Democrat cities. So here's the main point. You know what? This was supposed to be about taxes, but here we go. It's a broader issue. Trump just technically raised taxes for the rich people. Who's complaining? The rich people who lived in these places. So I say among the people who are uprooting, many say they had long considered a change, but they saw the tax law as a reason to finally undertake the potentially difficult task of changing their state residency. They say, there's a quote here. "It was another bucket of straw on the back of the camel," said John Lee, a wealth management executive and longtime resident of Sacramento. Mr. Lee and his wife Tracy moved their primary residence last winter to Incline Village, a resort community on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe. Let me play you the world's smallest violin. Sorry, dude. Oh, heavens. You had to move out of Sacramento to a resort community. Look, man, I get it. It sucks when your taxes go up. But what we're talking about is a small sliver of the population who tend to be wealthy. Trump apparently cut the taxes for the poor people, reduced wealth inequality, and guess what? It targeted the Democrats. Why? Because the wealthy people with the high taxes are the ones who live in these blue cities. It's paradoxical, ain't it? Perhaps that's why, you know what? I'll say this too. I'll wrap this up. Okay, I'll keep it short. Vox.com wrote a story in 2016. The Democratic Party has become the party of the wealthy, and they showed the flit. Here you go. Here's your example. So I'd love to see these, far leftist types and these Democrats really unite around the idea that it was bad for Trump to raise taxes or to reduce the deductions wealthier people have in their wealthy urban districts. But let me wrap up by saying this. Here's a point I really want to drive home. Why is it that Democrats vote for policies they get mad about? It's true. Look, I can't speak to what the Republicans think. I didn't grow up or live in a Republican area. So I don't know what they're voting for and what they're doing. I can tell you, I lived in Chicago where you've got complaints about racist cops, but the cops, are targeting people based on like weapons and gun violence. And it's the policies of the Democratic politicians they voted for that are then doing it. Isn't it a weird paradox? Whatever, man. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.